So every week I get my raw sales data in this CSV format. It contains columns like customer ID, the billing zip code of the customer, their email address, and the purchase amount. Each row represents a transaction that occurs in a moment of time, and of course the same customer can have multiple rows because they might purchase something multiple times in 1 week. So let's put this data into TaskPipes. I create a new pipe. I can upload the file. And down here we get a preview of the first 10 rows. This preview step comes up every time for every step. So what I want to do is basically work out in which geographical regions my most valuable customers are. So normally if I was to do this in Excel, you'd have to go through this series of manual steps and run this every single week. With TaskPipes, we can create a pipe and then just run it automatically anytime we get this weekly sales data. So the first thing I want to do is I basically want to group together rows of data according to customer to work out the total amount that customers have spent in this week. So what I want to use is it's called the group by. So it groups similar rows together and adds another row together. So if we group by customer ID, which is obviously unique for each customer, and we sum together the purchase amount, then what we get is this extra column that's added on, which basically represents how much each customer, according to, well, here's their email address, how much they've spent. So here you can see it's added up our Kemmer's transaction for this row and also for this row to give me this number here. And it basically just goes through the whole data and does that analysis. So what we can basically remove these rows that have no value in them because they're just used as basically intermediate rows. So what I would do is I'd add a filter to then choose basically when that row is empty. When that row is empty, we basically don't display it. And so here now you can see we've removed those empty rows. So now what we have is this extra column which represents how much all our individual customers have spent in total. Now the next thing we want to do is basically extract their zip code. Now here you can see we have a range of zip codes. We have either their zip code without the +4 or we also have it with the +4. We basically want it so that we have only 5-digit zip codes and these +4 extra digits are removed. So what we can use there is a formula. So if we just call this new column 5-digit zip code, and then we want to insert a formula. So the way formulas work is a new column is inserted, you define the name of that column, and then you can basically use formulas in exactly the same way you do in Excel to extract data based upon the other rows and columns here. We have the same grid-like system as in Excel, so we can reference any other cells available to us. It's worth pointing out that you define the formula for the very first cell highlighted here, and then it's basically dragged down the same way that happens in Excel. So what we basically want to do is get the index of that dash, so the character number that dash appears in the zip code. And so we can see this is in column B. So the way you get that in Excel is you use this search function. We then actually want to take all the characters left of that dash, and so the way we do that is with the left function. So that formula, I've already prepared it in advance, basically looks like this. So all this does is takes the first digits before the dash in column B. And of course if there isn't a dash, then we actually want to account for that, and so we put an if error in, and that will then cover that. So if I hit save, you can see I then get the 5-digit zip code. So we basically stripped out those extra 4 digits there. Now, what I want to do now is basically extract a latitude and longitude from that zip code, and so we have a special function that does that, which is pretty cool. Which basically allows you to define which column is the zip code. So in this case, we're going to take the 5-digit zip code, and then you can see it then generates the latitudes and longitudes from those zip codes. Now, as I mentioned before, we want to work out which customers are most valuable to us. So we're going to apply a filter that basically says, which means that we only get the customers that have spent more than $2,000 with us. So if I go to that column that I created, which is the sum of the purchase amount, and I say greater than or equal to $2,000, I then apply that, and as you can see in the preview here, we actually don't get any results because this was just previewing the first 10 rows. When we actually run it later, we will get some results. And finally, I want to display this on a map. So the way you do that is you select your latitude column, you select your longitude column, and then you can add these two extra optional columns. One of them defines the size of the point that's plotted on the map. So basically, the point that's plotted on the map, the diameter of it will be proportional to whatever this number is. And so what might be a pretty good thing for us to plot here is the total amount they've spent. And then you can also add a label to your points on the map. And the most logical thing for this is the grouping option. So if I then save that, hit run, and so this generates a map which shows my most valuable customers, where the size of the circle is basically proportional to how much these customers have spent this week. And so as you can see, most of my valuable customers appear to be in the Kansas and Missouri areas. Maybe I should focus my marketing there. Alternatively, I could maybe I'd want to find out where my least valuable customers were, for example. So if we set it to less than, I don't know, $120, for example, you can simply run it again, and then the map will populate. So, oh, I've got one in Puerto Rico, and that's why I'm all the way down there, but you can basically see how easy it is to change your settings if you ever want to modify a pipe. So that's a summary of how you do a weekly sales analysis in TaskPipes. Thank you.